Everybody lies, big data, new data, and what the internet can tell us about who we really are, by Seth Stephens-Davidowitz. Picture this. It's 2016, and literally everyone, the experts, the pollsters, your uncle who's into politics, is saying the same thing. Donald Trump? No chance. The polls are crystal clear. His campaign is a train wreck. Case closed. Except something weird was happening in the shadows of the internet, something nobody was paying attention to. A few years earlier, this young data scientist named Seth Stephens-Davidowitz was messing around with Google's search data, basically seeing what people type when they're alone at 2 a.m. in their pajamas. And he discovered something that made his blood run cold. He found a completely different map of America. Not the polite, public-facing version we see on cable news, but something much darker lurking underneath. The biggest predictor of where Trump would dominate? The frequency of Google searches for racial slurs. Not polling data, not income levels, not education, racist Google searches. This wasn't people telling a pollster what they thought they should say. This was what people were thinking when nobody was watching. And that discovery cracks open the central question of this entire book. What if literally everything we think we know about people is wrong? What if the surveys, the polls, even what your best friend tells you over coffee, is just theater, a performance we're all putting on? And what if there's a way to see what's really going on behind the curtain? That's the wild promise of this book. The author, a former Google data scientist, claims he's found what he calls a digital truth serum, a tool so powerful it can reveal our deepest fears, our secret desires, our hidden prejudices, and the surprising realities of who we actually are when the mask comes off. By the time we're done here, you'll understand what this tool is and how it's been used to answer some genuinely mind-bending questions. How many men are actually gay? What's the real source of racism in America? And what do women worry about more than anything else when it comes to their bodies? Trust me, the answers are not what you'd expect. They might even make you a little uncomfortable, but they'll give you an entirely new way of seeing the world. So let's dive into the hidden side of human nature. Let's start with something simple, something the title practically shouts at you. Everybody lies. No, really. We lie constantly. To our friends, our parents, our doctors. We lie about how much we drink, how often we exercise, whether we've actually read that book everyone's talking about. We say we're fine when we're falling apart. We promise to call, and then don't. And we especially lie to surveys. For decades, surveys were treated like gospel truth for understanding society. Ask 1,000 people a question, crunch the numbers, boom, you've got your answer, right? Well, not quite. The author points to this hilarious study about condom sales. According to Nielsen, which tracks retail purchases, Americans buy about 600 million condoms a year. But when researchers ask people in surveys how many condoms they use, the math gets creative. Based on what women report, it adds up to 1.1 billion condoms. Based on what men report, 1.6 billion. Somebody's lying. Actually, pretty much everybody's lying. And it's not just about sex. People claim they voted when they didn't. They inflate their charitable donations. They pretend they got better grades in college. Why? Because we're all desperate to look good, even to some anonymous stranger on the phone asking questions. We're constantly performing, presenting our highlight reel instead of the blooper reel. For the longest time, we had no way of knowing what the blooper reel actually looked like. Until now. This is where Seth Stephens-Davidowitz drops his bombshell idea. In the 21st century, he says, we've been handed an incredible gift, a source of data so brutally honest, so raw, that it functions like a digital truth serum. That gift, the Google search bar. Think about how you use Google. You're usually alone. There's nobody judging you. And here's the key. You have every reason to be honest. If you're worried about a weird rash, you don't type in what you think sounds good. You type in exactly what you're seeing because you actually want an answer. If you have a dark thought or a secret question, you might confess it to that little search box, knowing it won't judge you, gossip about you, or report you to your mom. As the author puts it, People's search for information is, itself, information. And when you collect millions of these tiny, honest confessions, patterns emerge that reveal profound truths about who we really are. Take marriage. According to surveys, the biggest problems in marriage are communication issues or money troubles. But what are people actually typing into Google at midnight? The most common complaint about marriage isn't lack of communication. It's not having sex. Searches for sexless marriage are more than 3 times as common as unhappy marriage and 8 times more common than loveless marriage. This is the hidden world Google reveals, a world where our private anxieties spill out. And sometimes, those anxieties reveal a much darker side of humanity than we're comfortable admitting. Which brings us back to the 2008 election. When Barack Obama won, the official narrative, backed by respected polls from Gallup and others, was that America had entered a post-racial era. Race, they said, was no longer a major factor. But the author, then just a curious grad student, started typing some uncomfortable words into Google Trends, specifically the N-word. What he found shocked him. He'd expected it to be rare. Instead, he discovered that searches for the N-word in the United States were as common as searches for migraine or economist. And people weren't looking up rap lyrics. A massive portion of these searches were for racist jokes. Searches like, quote, stupid N-words or I hate N-words, numbered in the millions every single year. On the night of Obama's historic election, while the world was celebrating, searches for N-word president and KKK spiked dramatically. A vicious, hidden racism was bubbling beneath the surface, completely invisible to traditional polling. Stephens-Davidowitz used this data to create a new map of racism in America. It wasn't the simple North versus South divide people assumed. The highest rates of racist searches were concentrated in a belt stretching through parts of upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and into the rural South. And it wasn't just Republicans. Many heavily Democratic areas showed equally high rates. This data turned out to be eerily predictive. In areas with the most racist searches, Obama consistently underperformed compared to John Kerry, the white Democratic candidate from 2004. The data suggested that raw racism cost Obama about 4 percentage points nationally, far more than any survey had ever detected. 4 years later, that same map of hidden racism became the strongest predictor for Donald Trump's support in the Republican primaries. The rage the polls had missed, the rage polite society ignored, had been sitting there all along, just waiting for the right candidate to channel it. Google searches revealed we were living in a completely different country than the one we thought we knew. This discovery highlights the first superpower of big data. It gives us entirely new types of information, stuff we simply never had access to before. For centuries, we could only guess at people's secret thoughts. Now they're written down, aggregated, and ready to analyze. But it's not just Google searches. The author shows how this data reimagined principle is revolutionizing almost every field. Consider horse racing. For generations, the way you picked a future champion was by studying its pedigree, its family tree. Bloodline was everything. But this Harvard-educated data geek named Jeff Cedar decided to ignore all that. He thought, what if the secret to a great racehorse isn't on paper, but literally inside its body? He invented a portable ultrasound machine and started measuring the internal organs of thousands of horses. Nostril size, muscle fibers, even their poop. Most of it was useless noise. But then he found the secret. The size of a horse's heart, specifically its left ventricle, was the single greatest predictor of racing success. One day, Cedar examined a young, reddish-brown horse known only as number 85. Its pedigree was decent, but not spectacular. It had a scratch on its ankle. Most experts weren't impressed. But when Cedar looked at the ultrasound data, his jaw hit the floor. This horse's left ventricle was in the 99.61 stone percentile, a literal 1 in a million heart. Cedar's team practically begged the owner, Ahmed Zayat, not to sell. Zayat was so convinced he secretly bought his own horse back at auction. That horse was later named American Pharoah. 18 months later, he became the first horse in over 3 decades to win the Triple Crown. Sater had found a new type of data, heart size, and it gave him an insight the old experts, obsessed with pedigree, had completely missed. This same principle applies everywhere. 2 economists, Matt Genskow and Jesse Shapiro, wanted to measure media bias objectively. How do you measure something so subjective? They realized the answer was in the words themselves. They turned language into data. They analyzed the congressional record and discovered that Democrats and Republicans consistently use different phrases for the same issues. Republicans say death tax. Democrats say estate tax. Republicans talk about reform Social Security. Democrats call it privatize Social Security. They built a model based on these politically charged phrases and analyzed hundreds of newspapers across the country, giving each one a political slant score. And what did they discover? The reason some papers lean left and others lean right wasn't about billionaire owners pushing agendas. It was much simpler. Newspapers give readers what they want. In liberal cities, the papers lean liberal. In conservative cities, they lean conservative. It's not conspiracy. It's capitalism. Words are data. Hearts are data. Even pictures are data. Researchers analyzed a century of high school yearbook photos and found a clear trend. Americans, especially women, started smiling in photos around the mid-20th century. Why? Not because they got happier, but because Kodak launched a massive ad campaign associating photography with happy moments. Our smiles are literally the result of marketing. Even light from space can be data. Economists measure economic growth in developing countries by analyzing satellite photos of nighttime lights. When an economy grows, more people can afford electricity, and the country literally gets brighter. This brings us to the second superpower of big data. It provides brutally honest data. This is that digital truth serum we talked about. Because of anonymity and genuine need for answers, sites like Google and Pornhub get people to admit things they'd never say anywhere else. And this honesty lets us answer some incredibly sensitive questions. For example, how many American men are actually gay? It's been debated forever. The famous Kinsey report from the 1940s claimed 10%, but his sample was wildly skewed. Modern surveys put it closer to 2 or 3%. But we know people lie about sexuality, especially in less tolerant places. The author tackles this like a detective, using 3 layers of data. First, he looks at surveys and Facebook profiles where people openly identify as gay. In tolerant states like Rhode Island, the percentage of openly gay men is nearly double that of intolerant states like Mississippi. Part of this is migration, gay men moving to accepting places, but that only explains less than half the difference. The rest? The closet. So how do you measure what's hidden in the closet? You turn to the digital truth serum. The author analyzed anonymous data from Google and porn sites. Nationwide, about 5% of all male porn searches are for gay male porn. Here's the fascinating part. That number is remarkably consistent everywhere. In tolerant Rhode Island, it's 5.2%. In intolerant Mississippi, it's 4.8%. The desire exists whether it's safe to express it or not. This suggests the true figure for gay men in America is around 5%, meaning millions, particularly in less tolerant states, are still in the closet. The data paints a heartbreaking picture of this hidden struggle. Searches for "Is my husband gay?" peak in states with the lowest support for gay marriage. In those same states, men frequently search "gay test" immediately after searching for gay porn, revealing deep internal conflict. This honest data also reveals our deepest insecurities. What do men and women worry about most regarding their bodies? For men, surprise, surprise, their penis. Men Google more questions about their penis than about their lungs, liver, brain, and feet combined. The number one concern? Size. But here's the twist. Do women actually care? According to their Google searches, basically not at all. For every 170 searches men make about their own penis, women make only one about a partner's. And when they do, a shocking number, over 40%, are complaints that it's too big, usually related to pain during sex. So if men are obsessed with penis size, what's the female equivalent? What's the biggest bodily insecurity for women, as revealed by Google? Not weight, not breasts, not wrinkles. It's worrying about whether their vagina smells. Women make nearly as many searches about their genitals as men do. And the number one concern is odor. They worry it smells like fish, vinegar, even onions. It's a secret anxiety, shared by millions, but rarely discussed. And once again, the data shows a disconnect. Men rarely search about a partner's vagina. When they do, it's usually not to complain, but to ask how to gently bring up the topic without hurting her feelings. The profound lesson? We're all so busy judging ourselves that we barely have energy left to judge anyone else. This leads to the third superpower of big data. It allows us to zoom in. Because these datasets are massive, millions or billions of data points, we can focus on tiny, specific slices of the population and uncover patterns that would be invisible in a small survey. Take economist Raj Chetty's work. He got access to the tax records of every single American. At first, he used this enormous dataset to ask the same old questions about tax policy and got the same old answers. He was discouraged. Then he realized his mistake. The power wasn't just more data. It was the ability to ask entirely new kinds of questions. He decided to zoom in on geography and ask, is America truly the land of opportunity? If you look at the whole country, the answer is no. A poor kid in America has lower odds of becoming rich than a poor kid in Canada or Denmark. But Chetty's data showed this is the wrong way to look at it. America isn't one country. It's a collection of vastly different societies. If you grow up poor in San Jose, California, your chances of climbing the income ladder are as good as anywhere in the world. But if you grow up poor in Charlotte, North Carolina, your chances are lower than in any developed country. By zooming in, Chetty revealed that where you grow up has a massive impact on your destiny. This zoom-in power also helped the author solve a personal mystery. Why does he love baseball while his younger brother Noah finds it mind-numbingly boring? He used Facebook data, looking at favorite baseball teams of millions of men, broken down by birth year, and he found a stunning pattern. A man's favorite baseball team is overwhelmingly predicted by which team won the World Series when he was around 8 years old. The data shows a clear peak. Ages 5 to 15 are the critical window for cementing lifelong fandom. The author was born at exactly the right time to be 8, when his beloved New York Mets won the 1986 World Series. His brother Noah was born 4 years later and was spared this lifetime of baseball-induced suffering. This isn't just about sports. Other researchers have used the same technique to show that our political views are largely formed by age 18, imprinted by whoever was president during our teenage years. Our identities are shaped by these arbitrary facts of when and where we were born. Big data, with its ability to zoom in, is the only tool that can reveal these patterns with such clarity. Finally, the fourth superpower of big data, it allows us to run endless causal experiments. In science, the gold standard for proving one thing causes another is the randomized controlled trial. You take two groups, give one a treatment and the other a placebo, and see what happens. This is how we know if medicine actually works. But in the real world, these experiments are expensive and slow. In the digital world, they're cheap, fast, and can be run on millions of people who don't even know they're participants. This is called A/B testing. In 2008, Barack Obama's campaign wanted the best website design to maximize sign-ups and donations. Their original page had a picture of Obama and a button saying "Sign Up." But was that optimal? They decided to test it, showing different visitors different combinations of pictures and buttons. Maybe a family photo would work better? Maybe the button should say "Learn More"? The results were astounding. The winning combination Obama family photo with a "Learn More" button increased signups by 40%. This one simple experiment netted an estimated $60 million in additional donations. This experiment power is now used everywhere online. Every time you see a different headline or button color, you're probably part of an A/B test figuring out what makes you click. Sometimes you don't even need to design an experiment. Sometimes nature runs one for you. Economists call these natural experiments. For years, nobody could definitively prove if TV advertising actually worked. Sure, companies that spend a lot on ads tend to have high sales. But correlation or causation? Maybe they spend a lot because they already have great products. Companies wouldn't run a real experiment, like not advertising in 20 cities, because it seemed too risky. So how do you solve this? The author and colleagues found a brilliant natural experiment hidden in the Super Bowl. Companies buy expensive ad slots before knowing which teams will play, but the outcome of the championship games hugely impacts viewership. If the Patriots make the Super Bowl, Boston viewership is massive. If they lose to the Ravens, Baltimore viewership explodes instead. For advertisers, it's essentially a random coin flip, determining which cities see tens of thousands of extra eyeballs on their ad. By comparing sales in winning versus losing cities, researchers finally measured the true causal effect of Super Bowl ads. The results? Stunning. For every dollar a movie studio spent on a Super Bowl ad, they got back nearly $3 in ticket sales. The ads were incredibly effective. This same logic can answer life's biggest questions. Does it matter where you go to college? Everyone knows Harvard graduates, on average, earn more than Penn State graduates. But correlation or causation? Maybe Harvard just attracts more talented students to begin with. To find out, economists Stacey Dale and Alan Kruger used a clever natural experiment. They compared students accepted to both Harvard and Penn State. Some chose Harvard. Others, for various personal reasons, chose Penn State. These two groups were, in admissions committees, eyes, equally talented. 10 years later, their incomes were virtually identical. The study suggests that for talented students, the drive and ability you bring matter far more than the name on your diploma. It's not the school making you successful, you make the school look good. Of course, with great power comes great responsibility and potential for disaster. The author carefully points out big data's limitations and dangers. First, there's the be wise of dimensionality. When you have millions of variables to test, every possible Google search term, it's easy to find random correlations that look meaningful, but are actually just noise. This is why so many studies claiming to predict the stock market with tweets fail. They've just found a lucky coin that came up heads 10 times in a row. Second, there's the danger of only measuring what's easy to measure. A teacher's value can't be reduced to test scores. A person's worth can't be measured by Facebook likes. We risk becoming obsessed with optimizing numbers while losing sight of more important, unquantifiable aspects of life. Finally, there are serious ethical questions. Do we want corporations using our secret anxieties to price discriminate, charging us more because our data suggests we're big spenders? Casinos already do this, using data to calculate each gambler's pain point, the maximum they can lose before stopping, then extracting exactly that amount. Do we want governments using search history to predict crime? While data can help allocate resources, like protecting a mosque after hateful search spikes, it's terrible for predicting what any individual will do. Millions have dark thoughts, very few act on them. The line between protection and Minority Report-style pre-crime is thin and dangerous. In the end, this new data science is like any powerful tool. It can build or destroy. It can exploit people's weaknesses or help us understand our shared humanity and assist those suffering in silence. The author concludes with a brilliant twist that perfectly captures the book's message. He describes struggling to write the perfect, profound conclusion. Then he found a study using Amazon data to see how many people actually finish books they buy. The data was clear. For dense nonfiction by economists, completion rates are shockingly low. Fewer than 3% of readers finished Thomas Piketty's celebrated Capital in the 21st century. The data told him very few people would read his carefully crafted conclusion anyway, so he followed the data. He ends by saying he's going to stop working on the conclusion and go get a beer with friends. Because too few of us, big data tells him, are still reading anyway. So what do we take from this wild journey into big data? For me, the most powerful lesson isn't just that people lie, but that the truth, in its raw, unfiltered form, is finally becoming visible. For the first time in human history, we can systematically measure the gap between our public and private selves, and that gap is where the most interesting stories live. This book is a powerful reminder that our intuition, even when it feels absolutely right, can be completely wrong. We believe the internet makes us more polarized, but data shows we actually encounter more opposing viewpoints online than in our own families. We believe growing up poor and hungry creates NBA stars, but data shows players from stable middle-class backgrounds have significant advantages. We believe elite universities are the key to career success, but data suggests that for talented students, it matters very little. Time and again, the data reveals a world working in exactly the opposite way we thought. This is both unsettling and incredibly hopeful. It's unsettling to confront hidden racism, secret insecurities, and quiet suffering. It's not always a pretty picture, but it's hopeful because, as the author argues, collecting rich data on the world's problems is the first step toward fixing them. You can't solve problems you can't see. Big data is like a powerful microscope, revealing societal issues with unprecedented clarity. We can see children suffering from abuse who slip through official reports. We can see people struggling with sexuality in hostile communities. We can see which policies actually work and which backfire spectacularly. So how can we apply this in our own lives? Two simple but profound takeaways. First, develop healthy skepticism for the official story. When you see a poll, survey, or popular consensus, ask yourself, what would the Google search data say? What hidden incentives might cause people to present a version of truth that isn't entirely real? This doesn't mean becoming cynical, just becoming a more thoughtful observer. Second, and perhaps more important, practice more empathy. The data in this book shows repeatedly that beneath the polished exterior people present on social media, there's a world of anxiety, insecurity, and doubt. Remember the author's update to the old self-help quote, "Never compare your insides to everyone else's outsides." The big data version? Never compare your Google searches to everyone else's Facebook posts. Knowing you're not alone in your fears and imperfections can be incredibly liberating. That was a summary of Everybody Lies by Seth Stephens-Davidowitz. We've explored the main highways of his argument, but honestly, a summary is just a map. The real treasure comes from traveling the roads yourself. The magic of this book is in the hundreds of surprising stories, and those quiet moments when a particular insight hits you unexpectedly. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed today sparked your curiosity, I genuinely encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see yourself, your friends, and the world. A link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.